Hi there. Thanks for listening. This would be, I guess, what I would consider episode 1 of the WP Guinea Pig podcast. The title might change, and honestly, this recording is almost an experiment in and of itself. Really, what I'm trying to do is get the content of what I'm trying to produce in guides into an audio format too, so that in case you didn't want to try and read, 2,000, 4,000 words about a given topic, maybe you want to listen to it as a different way of learning from me. So this episode is about managed WordPress. Like, what is managed WordPress hosting and how do you pick a great host? Before I dive in, I do want to say that there are affiliate links in this article. And if you are listening to this from the player embedded in the audio, I do honestly recommend these products, and I spend hours and hours crafting this guide and things like that. So I wouldn't do that if I didn't honestly recommend them. So let's get on with it. WordPress dominates the internet, and familiarity helps create better websites, but regular hosting is often too manual. Enter managed WordPress hosting. You're probably going to laugh when you realize how simple this concept is. Managed WordPress hosting is web hosting where the host manages WordPress for you, where much of the techie kind of back-end stuff, the management legwork of it all is done for you. How it is managed varies very widely depending on the host that you choose. And in this guide, I'm going to dive into what exactly they're doing for you, and then I'll also go through and give you some of my top hosts, my top picks. So what exactly is managed WordPress hosting? And as I mentioned above, it really is web hosting where the host will handle the installation and the initial setup of WordPress for you. They'll do patching and things like that. But where it gets interesting is in just how much of the host is going to manage for you and how they manage it and the other niceties they kind of throw into the mix. Of course, assuming that their platform is rock solid and fast. Those two things you pretty much have to have right up front. Some will build their own caching systems based on their infrastructure, so you don't have to worry about caching. Others will put your site into the Google Cloud platform, while others will build extensive web application firewalls for improved security. There's a wide range of things. So what do you look for in a managed WordPress host? When it comes to managed WordPress hosting, you now have quite a selection. Not many years ago, it was almost all regular web hosting, and you would have to install WordPress yourself. It is so much easier today, but while it's easy, there are things to be wary of. And I'm about to go through quite a few of the things to keep in mind when shopping around for a managed WordPress host. I'm going to try to explain what it is and the type of website that you would need for certain features. So number 1 here, data center location. Now, the location of the data center is important if your target audience is in a certain location. For instance, if your audience is in India, you'd want to find a host with data centers in India, or at the very least uses CDNs in India, but more on CDNs coming up. Essentially, you want your website to be hosted as closely with your audience as you can. Location is important for any type of website when you are concerned about performance and want the fastest experience for your readers. Content delivery network. A content delivery network, or CDN, is often part of the deal you get from managed WordPress hosts, but not all. A good content delivery network will improve the performance of your website globally. In a nutshell, a CDN delivers the static resources of your page, like the CSS and scripts, to your reader from a server that is as close to the location as possible, instead of everything coming from your your web host. I would say pretty much all websites should use a CDN these days. They're relatively cheap now. If your host doesn't happen to have it, you can use something like Bunny CDN to add CDN capabilities at a very good price. Cloud, VPS, or shared hosting. Cloud hosting is when your site is hosted in a platform of resources like CPU, memory, bandwidth, and you generally pay for the resources that you use. This could be a private cloud that's built by the host on their own infrastructure, or they might use services like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft on their large cloud networks. VPS stands for Virtual Private Server. In essence, you pay for your own server and then take care of it yourself. It's not dedicated hardware necessarily. The server is virtual, but you are getting your own resources to do what you want with. I guess in some ways you can call this do-it-yourself hosting. Shared hosting is what you should avoid. This is where other websites will reside on the same hosting resources as your site. And yes, it can be as bad as it sounds. If just one of those other websites does something to take the server down, your site will come down with it. Do not use shared hosting unless you can't afford anything else, or that maybe your website is just a blog. It's just a journal for your thoughts and you have no other intentions for your site. But if your site is intended to earn money, do content marketing, or have some kind of a conversion rate, or is basically your business or your idea, and it's something that you want to be proud of going forward into the future and have a long term with, you should never, ever, ever use shared hosting. Next up is the web server software. The top web server software that you'll see is Apache Nginx, I think it's called, and Lightspeed. Often you'll see there's a hybrid combination of Nginx and Apache. I don't want to dive too much into the technology here for this article and for this guide. While Apache is the original is the most popular or the widest reaching right now, Nginx does bring improvements to speed, but Lightspeed is what you want if you care about performance. Without getting into the tech though, Lightspeed gives you the flexibility of using htaccess for the configuration and controls while also being the fastest web server available right now. In the section down below this guide, I will go over my favorite managed hosts and describe which ones use Lightspeed. The operating system is generally not really a concern. While it is possible to host WordPress on Windows, nearly every host is based on Linux or some form of cloud platform that have similarities with Linux. Next, we have uptime and a high availability. Now, uptime is how availability is measured. It's the amount of time during a given period, usually a month, measured as a percentage, that the host has been up and all services functioning. You'll often see the hosts, showing off their 99.99% uptime guarantee. That's a very small number. That's 52 minutes and 36 seconds of downtime per year, roughly 4 minutes and 38 seconds a month. Now, even if the host shows off that number, you must make sure it is in the service level agreement that they will meet that 99.99% uptime, and what happens if they do not. Most hosts will just simply offer you a discount on your bill for any of the time beyond the 99.99% threshold. Next, we have performance. With Uncle Google more and more taking performance into account as a ranking factor, you'll want a fast host. This is where things become difficult to judge, though. Every host is going to say they're blazingly fast. If you took a shot every time the word fast was on a host's website, you'd probably pass out of alcohol poisoning. You'll see all sorts of marketing lingo based on technologies like PHP 7, Nginx, Lightspeed, SSD, HTTP2, and so on and so on. There's just a whole bunch, and it actually kind of just becomes overwhelming if you don't know what these mean. And hint, pretty much every host worth anything use modern tech, so you don't really need to think too hard about these. I would say it's more about the quality of the host. And later in this guide, like I said, I'm listing my top picks, so don't worry about this. Customer support and WordPress management. Now, this is one of the key aspects to look out for if you ask me. Customer support is important if you don't have the tech skills necessary to deal with problems that may arise with your website. This is where your managed WordPress hosts compete the fiercest. The best will offer you a ton of support. They'll dig into the problems with you, not only on their hosting platform, but in your WordPress build too. You get the sense that they care and are a part of your team. They're there when you need them most. And if you don't have the IT skills to troubleshoot your own issues, then this is probably the most important feature to look for. Even if the host doesn't seem to have the absolute best specs in the world, you'll regret not having help just so that your page can load 100 milliseconds faster. Customer support brings peace of mind, especially if your website is an important part of your business or it is your business. Control panel. The control panel is a dashboard that the host would kind of give you access to when you become a customer with them. It will range in capabilities where you can do things like installing WordPress or running backups or setting up caching and just much more. You may have heard of cPanel, as it's the granddaddy of web hosting control panels, but you'll find hosts that build their own or have heavily customized versions of cPanel or Plesk. As long as you can do the primary tasks, I'd say there isn't much of a differentiator unless the host control panel is just absolutely terrible. but you shouldn't find yourself using a control panel much after you get things set up and running anyway. Staging site. A staging site is a playground where you can load a copy of your site for testing. Some hosts offer a staging area so that you can test plugins, theme changes, and validate them before pushing the changes to your live site. A staging site can be important if your website is vital to your business and changes need to be tested so you don't accidentally break something for your customers. But there are a couple things about this feature. First, does the host offer one? And then second, if they do, how do they push changes to your live site? Number two is the vital part to understand, because if you run something like an e-commerce site with transactions happening all the time, the last thing you want when pushing your staged changes to live is to lose that transaction data. Now, I won't go too deep into that in this guide here, but if you run an e-commerce site or something that has live transactions happening often, you should validate with the host what happens when you sync the staging site changes with your live site. It's definitely something to keep in mind. Scaling. When you start a brand new website, you generally don't have much traffic. You'll start with a few hosting or as few hosting resources as possible so you can save money. But if you're doing things right, over time, you'll gain traction and traffic will pick up. And hopefully you'll gain a ton of traffic. But with lots of traffic, you'll also need the ability for your hosting to scale with you. Some hosts make this easy and some, well, not so much. A solid cloud host will automatically scale with you. While many hosts will make the claim that they scale, they often mean that they have tiers that you can move to as you grow, which is fine if the transition is simply a billing change and everything just kind of happens smoothly. But just be careful here. Make sure the host is able to add those resources without an impact to your site, especially if uptime and availability are important to you. Top managed WordPress hosts. So this is by no means an exhaustive list of managed WordPress providers. This is simply a small collection I have either personally used or worked with others who have. Some are big name, well known, while others are up and coming. I should note I am linking to these with affiliate links, but I promise you 100% these are great hosts. You can't go wrong with any of these hosts on this list, but there are nuances between them. This list is in no particular order either. They just, it's how they came to mind while I was writing this guide for you. First up, we have Liquid Web. I think I consider Liquid Web the elder statesman of the managed WordPress hosting world. While their managed WordPress plan is actually relatively new, and they recently went through a branding rename, or they absorbed another company and they kind of renamed their brand a little bit for their managed hosting. They have been in the hosting business for a very long time, though, with a fantastic track record. And they don't have the tippy top tier performance. They are fast, but that isn't why I recommend them. No. You should use Liquid Web if you want the best technical support possible, including WordPress support. Not only does Liquid Web offer some excellent WordPress tools like automated before and after comparison for plugin updates, but they have a staff full of WordPress knowledge. And you can access them via chat anytime. And you may not realize how nice that is until you experience it, but having chat support is a huge benefit. Next, I have Kinsta. Kinsta is probably the most renowned of the hosts on this list, and for good reason. It has an exceptionally high quality offer. You won't find any corners cut here. Of course, this is offset by the price. You are getting more than you pay for, but it is not the cheapest host out there. Their plans, I believe, start at $30 a month. But it offers basically everything there is and more, such as PHP monitoring to self-heal in the event of a problem, and a huge warranty-like feature. If your site is hacked while hosted on Kinsta, they'll take care of it for free. And as you can see, it's expensive in comparison to others, but Kinsta goes well above and beyond to be the top-tier managed WordPress host to beat. Kinsta also spends a great deal of time building an excellent blog sharing how to do things with WordPress. That is an absolute tome of a knowledge base that you should read. Next, we have Name Hero. I kind of like these guys. They have that scrappy startup feel, a team of people dedicated to building something nerdy that brings excellent performance and features without a huge cost. In fact, if I wasn't using Clost, I probably would host WordPress Guinea Pig here. They meet all the right feature points for me with their fast private cloud hosting based on Lightspeed web server. The only real catch is they aren't technically a managed WordPress host. Instead of signing up and getting immediate access to a WordPress dashboard, you have to click a button to install WordPress using cPanel. But they do have some easy instructions to follow. If you're less technically inclined, there's more getting set up with these guys than other hosts. And while they will try to help you, there is less WordPress specific customer support. They have excellent technical support though. But there is something I really like about their kind of homegrown, scrappy feel. They aren't trying to overwhelm you with larger than life marketing lingo. And if you scan my list of hosts, you might notice I don't include Siteground, which is ultra popular around the hosting world. But that's because in almost every instance where you'd consider using Siteground, I would just recommend using NameHero instead. Price, performance, everything's better. Next, we have Cloudways. Now, Cloudways is an interesting thing. It's less of a pure host in the direct sense. Instead, you can think of it as kind of a layer on top of a server or / cloud resources. When you sign up, you pick a plan just like you would with any other host, but you also pick the underlying infrastructure. So if you want your site hosted on DigitalOcean Droplets, sure, Cloudways will make that happen for you. You can even use AWS or Google Cloud Platform. They'll deploy to those infrastructures as well. It's actually kind of a nice idea. They provide the tools, services, and support on top of an existing infrastructure provider. Pretty smart. And finally, I have Clost. And honestly, I might be a little bit biased here, but Clost is the king for me. But that's because I have technical chops. Clost equals insanely fast performance. It's Lightspeed web server on the Google Cloud Platform using Clost's built-in object caching system is just crazy fast. And on top of that, you get the excellent Lightspeed cache plugin for free. It's a free plugin, but since it's on Lightspeed server, you actually get to take advantage of it. And so you don't have to hunt down a separate caching plugin or anything like that. Now, there's two primary concerns I think you might have with Clost. Number one is it's pay as you go. And this means you pay for the resources your site uses, like memory, bandwidth, CPU, etc. And this can be scary if you have no idea what your site uses. For me, WordPress Guinea Pig, it cost me only about $5 a month to host with them. And actually, I host 2 websites on Clost with a total of about, just shy of $10. Of course, the price will vary depending on your site and traffic numbers and things like that. Number 2, strictly platform-only technical support. This is, I want to say that this is actually kind of almost more what Clost is famous for. They will not help you with your WordPress problems. They are excellent at supporting their own platform, technical issues only, although they could be a tad friendlier. That's kind of the running joke about Clost is that they're not totally rude, but they are very much to the point and they don't sugarcoat things. At first, I was kind of annoyed by this, but over time, I think I've become to kind of like it. The service is fast, on point, and resolves the problem quickly, so I can't complain about that. And honestly, I haven't had that many problems anyways. If you have the technical skills and you want the best of the best hosting, Clost is what you want. But if you just want a host that will handle the technical side of WordPress and the hosting for you, don't use Clost, use something else that I have in this list. Okay, next let's talk about price. I don't want you to pick on price alone. Here's where I get a little philosophical with you. Please don't pick your hosting purely on the price. And as you can see from the list of things I went over, there's a lot to consider. But trust me, spending a little more upfront when starting a project that's important to you will bring you a great deal of comfort later. I would hate to see you become one of those people that are crying out there for help when your cheap host abandons you or you just can't figure out how to move or where to move to. So let me put it this way. Use Liquid Web if you just want your hosting to work and manage WordPress so that you can work on your content and your business. Even if you have the technical skills, but maybe in this project you don't want to use them, instead you're ready to focus on your content, Liquid Web can do that for you. Use Kinsta if you have a need for the highest end hosting with performance, security, self-healing, malware, and hacking assistance and more. Use Kinsta. It does cost more, but you get the ultimate peace of mind that your hosting and WordPress is in good hands. Use NameHero if you want a really fast site without all the extra features that you may not use anyway, and you want to save some money. NameHero has your back. It's clear that they have a passion for the hosting business, and you get some really great performance features for a low price. But you will need to be ready to help yourself a little more with your WordPress issues. They'll try to help you out, of course, but you will have to pull your own weight too. Use Cloudways if the idea of layering a managed WordPress service over the top of an infrastructure as a service operation, like DigitalOcean or Vultr or AWS and Google Cloud, if that sounds interesting to you, then go with Cloudways. It is basically like hiring a team of engineers with WordPress knowledge to help you with your website. It really is an effective strategy, I think, that you would likely enjoy. It is a little bit technical, so if you're a beginner with no technical skills, it can be a little bit intimidating. And finally, use Clost if you want the fastest hosting money can buy, and actually it's not that much money. Their platform using Google Cloud is the fastest I've seen. But you will absolutely need technical skills and be ready to deal with some pointed support. In summary, in this guide, I covered a great deal of what managed WordPress hosting is, and then dove into a lot of the features I think you should look out for. I probably missed some even, and this guide will get updated. Then I covered the hosts that I recommend wholeheartedly, and honestly, any one of them will be fine for your projects. I hope you found this helpful, and take care. I'll see you in the next episode when I talk about something else cool with WordPress.